Is this some kind of joke? The words sliced through the desert heat, sharp and laced with the arrogance of youth. Corporal Harris, still young but cloaked in the authority of his Marine uniform, gestured dismissively at the rifle on the bench. The weapon stood out starkly, painted a bright, toy-like orange, absurd among the blacks, tans, and dull greens of military steel. His comrades chuckled, mocking the old man seated beside it, calm and unmoved. To them, he was a relic, a distraction before their real training began. What they didn't know was that this quiet veteran, with his strange orange rifle, was about to remind them of a history they'd forgotten and deliver a lesson they'd never forget. Corporal Harris, barely out of his teens yet wearing his Marine Corps uniform like a badge of invincibility, flicked his wrist toward the odd rifle. "Sir, you can't be serious about bringing that thing here." His voice carried a false authority he hadn't yet earned. The man he mocked, Edward Walker, 82 years old, his life etched in the deep lines around his eyes, didn't turn his head. He stared downrange, where the searing air twisted distant targets into wavering mirages. Seated calmly on a simple stool, his body steady as stone, he offered no reply. The rifle beside him spoke volumes. Unlike the sleek military weapons across the range, this one was jarring. Its chassis and stock painted a flat, unreflective orange, the color of a road sign, the color of a child's toy. It looked ridiculous against the desert tans and matte blacks of the Marine arsenal. A freckled private first class laughed. "Maybe he thinks it's a squirt gun, Corporal." You know, for when he gets thirsty, the group erupted in laughter, smug in their youth, armed with digital scopes and ballistic calculators. To them, this old man and his garish weapon were a joke, an irrelevant shadow from a bygone era. Harris stepped closer, his shadow falling over Walker. "Sir, I'll need you to pack up your gear. This is a live-fire range for active-duty personnel. We're in the middle of advanced sniper training. That," he pointed sharply at the orange rifle, "is a distraction and a safety hazard." His words carried the practiced tone of command, yet beneath lay the smugness of someone convinced he held all the power. Walker didn't flinch. His hands rested loosely on his knees, his silence radiating a patience so deep it unsettled the corporal. Around them, the range's usual noise faded. Shooters at nearby benches paused mid-conversation, their eyes drifting toward the standoff. The desert hummed, but in this bubble of confrontation, the quiet was stifling. Harris, mistaking silence for defiance, raised his voice, a breach of range etiquette. "Did you hear me, old man? I said, pack it up. What are you even doing here? This isn't poker night at the Veterans Hall." He leaned in, lowering his voice just enough for the crowd to hear. "You probably don't even have clearance to be here." At last, Edward Walker moved. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for his worn canvas bag. The Marines tensed, expecting him to pack up. Instead, he pulled out an old leather wallet, softened by decades of use. From it, he produced a laminated card, his base access permit, and held it out silently. Harris snatched it, glancing before his eyes narrowed. "This has to be expired or fake." He flipped it over repeatedly, as if the plastic might reveal a trick. But there it was, clear as day. Walker Edward J. Every credential was valid. With no grounds to eject him, Harris shoved the card back, irritation deepening his jaws set. "Fine, you've got access," when he spat, "but that doesn't mean you can play with toys here. We've got a 4,000-meter target for our final qualification, a multi-million-dollar sensor suite. The last thing we need is a stray round from whatever that thing is, ruining our data." He gestured downrange where the target shimmered as a speck in the desert haze. The freckled private, emboldened, tapped the orange stock. "Feels like cheap plastic. Probably 3D printed it in your garage." In that moment, Walker's eyes changed. The patient calm vanished, replaced by something ancient, unyielding as stone. For a heartbeat, the desert faded. He was back in a field tent, the air thick with cordite and blood. A wounded comrade pressed against him, mortar fire pounding closer. A strained voice whispered from memory, "They're coming, Ed. They know we're here. You have to finish it." The orange paint, it wasn't a joke. It was a beacon, a lifeline, a signal for the rescue chopper to spot him in the endless jungle canopy. The color that marked his last hope of survival. Then the memory dissolved. The desert sun returned. The young Marine's smirks returned. Walker hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but now there was an edge beneath his quiet dignity. A silent gravity heavier than any weapon on the range. From the range tower, Gunny Thompson watched with narrowing eyes. A retired master sergeant, now a civilian range safety officer, he'd seen plenty of arrogant young Marines. But this was different. It wasn't just disrespect. It was who they were disrespecting. Thompson studied the old man carefully. Walker didn't move like a hobbyist. There was discipline in his stillness, a weight in his posture, and that rifle, though odd in color, had the clean, deliberate lines of a purpose-built tool. Thompson's chest tightened. He'd seen something like it once, in a classified briefing about a ghost, a legend whispered in the margins of war's history books never fully told. Then the name clicked. Walker Edward J. Thompson recalled seeing it on the sign-in sheet that morning, and a cold knot formed in his gut. These Marines had no idea. They weren't mocking just another veteran. They were poking a sleeping giant. With grim resolve, Thompson pulled his phone and stepped behind the tower. Scrolling quickly, he found the number he shouldn't call, but had to. The command duty officer answered, his tone casual. "A discipline issue, Gunny? Shouldn't this go through their company commander?" Thompson's voice sharpened. "Normally, yes. But the civilian's name is Edward Walker." Silence. Static hummed. The lieutenant, puzzled, asked, "Walker? Am I supposed to know that name?" Thompson's reply was urgent. "Run it up the chain. Fast. And tell them it's about his rifle. The orange one." He ended the call before questions followed. The fuse was lit. All he could do was wait and hope the explosion didn't consume them all. In the sterile calm of the base command center, Lieutenant Carter frowned at his phone. Gunny Thompson wasn't one to exaggerate, and his urgency lingered. Carter typed the name into the personnel database. Edward J. Walker. The screen spun, then locked, access restricted, eyes only. 07 and above. Carter felt a jolt. 07 meant a brigadier general, and he was only a second lieutenant. Without hesitation, he hurried to Colonel Ramsey's office. The colonel, his face etched with lines from decades of desert wars, looked up, annoyed. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Carter swallowed. "Sir, we have a civilian on the long-range facility. Edward Walker." The system flagged him, heavily. The colonel leaned in, eyes narrowing. When he saw the name, his face paled. He grabbed the secure line, the one to the commanding general. "Ma'am," he said, voice firm, "this is Colonel Ramsey. Walker is here, on our range right now." A pause. Then his tone grew urgent. "Yes, ma'am." "The ghost of the canyon. He's in a confrontation with some of our recon Marines." Another pause. "Yes, ma'am." "I'll meet you at your vehicle immediately. We're moving now." Hanging up, the colonel's expression hardened. He turned to Carter, voice like fire. "Get me the commander of 1st Recon. Tell him his career hangs by a thread. General Lawson is en route personally, and God help those Marines." Back on the range, Corporal Harris had lost patience. The old man's silence felt like mockery, an insult to his authority. A crowd had gathered, and with each watching pair of eyes, his temper flared hotter. He snapped, voice sharp. "That's it. I'm done asking. You're a danger to this facility and my Marines. I am ordering you to leave immediately. Refuse, and I'll have you detained for trespassing and obstructing training. Maybe even sent for a mental evaluation. Maybe you forgot where you are, old man." He stepped forward, hand reaching for Walker's shoulder, ready to drag him away. But he never touched him. The ground rumbled. A faint vibration grew into a roar of engines at full throttle. Heads turned toward the access road. A dust cloud rose, chasing a convoy of black SUVs with government plates, led by a Humvee speeding forward. They didn't slow. They stormed onto the range, kicking up dirt as they skidded to a stop. Doors flew open. Out of the lead SUV stepped Colonel Ramsey, but all eyes shifted to the second vehicle, where a figure emerged with the weight of legend. Brigadier General Lawson, her uniform pristine, her single star glinting in the desert sun. She moved with commanding grace. The air stilled as her boots crunched across the gravel. Harris froze, hands suspended, caught between arrogance and dawning horror. The general ignored him. Her eyes locked on Edward Walker, She strode forward, powerful, direct, and stopped before the old man. With crisp precision, she snapped into a salute, not perfunctory, but reverent, the kind given to a living legend. "Mr. Walker," she said, voice carrying across the silent range, "it is an honor. I apologize for the behavior of my Marines." They did not know who they were addressing. Edward Walker rose slowly from his stool. Not as tall as he once was, his posture still carried the straightness of an unbroken man. He offered a slight nod, nothing more, before the general lowered her salute. Her gaze turned to Corporal Harris. The warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by a coldness sharp enough to cut steel. "Corporal," she said, voice dangerously soft, "do you have any idea who this man is?" Harris stammered, pale and trembling. No, ma'am, he's just a civilian." The general gave a humorless laugh. "A civilian? Corporal, you and your men stand on ground you have never earned, breathing air bought by others' sacrifice? And this man is one of the reasons you wear that uniform." Her voice rose, heavy with reverence. "This is Edward Walker." She let the name fall like a benediction. Then she turned to the squad, words cutting like a blade. "Too young, too ignorant, too blind to see. Let me educate you. This man holds the highest civilian award for valor this nation can bestow. He was a special projects consultant for DARPA for 3 decades. Before that, he served in places your history books don't mention. He has 5 confirmed kills at distances beyond 2,500 yards, a record untouched for nearly 40 years. Every shot came from a rifle he designed and built himself. Our sniper doctrine exists because of him. He is called the Ghost of the Canyon, not because he fell, but because he went where no one else dared, accomplished what no one else could, and vanished without a trace." She gestured at the rifle, voice hardening. "And this toy you mocked? This is the Mark V, the prototype of the M210 sniper rifle you carry. He built it in a forward operating base from scavenged parts and a block of aluminum. And the orange paint you laughed at?" Her eyes burned into Harris. "That color saved his life, and a downed pilot's. He held off an enemy platoon for 3 days until evacuation. That pilot lived, and later became a 4-star general. Silence fell like a hammer. Harris and his Marines stared at the ground, faces hot with shame. General Lawson turned back to Harris, her voice a growl carrying more weight than a shout. "You did not see a veteran. You saw an old man. You did not see history. You saw a toy. You mistook strength beyond measure for weakness, and in doing so, you have disgraced your uniform, your corps, and yourselves." Her finger, trembling with fury, pointed at him. "You and your squad will report to my office at 0600 tomorrow. You will receive a personal lesson in Marine Corps history and professional respect, and it is a lesson you will never forget." The silence was suffocating. Then Edward Walker spoke. His voice was calm, steady, not loud, yet carrying farther than the general's rage. "General," he said gently, "they're young. They're proud. That's a good thing. They just need to learn where to aim it." He turned to Harris. There was no anger, only weary wisdom carved into his soul. "Your job isn't to be the strongest, son. It's to respect the strength that came before you. Humility is heavier than any rucksack, but it's the weight that will carry you farthest." His hand rested on the orange rifle, and another memory surfaced. He was younger in a makeshift workshop, machine oil thick in the air. A wounded pilot lay feverish on a cot. "Why orange, Ed?" the man mumbled. Walker hadn't looked up from the receiver he was milling. "Because I only plan on one shot," he answered. "And after that, I want to be easy to find, one way or another." The memory faded, leaving silence heavy with awe. The Marines, once mocking, stood humbled, realizing they'd been in the presence of a man who built his own beacon, ready for rescue or sacrifice. Consequences came swiftly. General Lawson placed Harris and his squad on a month-long remedial assignment. Not punishment through push-ups or marches, something deeper. They cleaned and maintained historical artifacts in the base museum. At night, they wrote essays on Medal of Honor recipients. Slowly, their arrogance was stripped away, replaced by humility no physical training could instill. The story of the old man with the orange rifle spread across the base like wildfire. a cautionary tale whispered in mess halls and training fields. A reminder that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Some walk quietly, unseen, carrying legacies of blood and fire. The command issued a mandate. All personnel would attend an annual seminar on veteran interaction and respect for elders. Weeks later, Harris sat alone in the base library, not by order, but by choice. He pored over declassified mission reports from conflicts half a century old. The door opened and Edward Walker entered, moving with quiet purpose toward the engineering techs. Harris's chest tightened. He rose, chair scraping, and stood rigid, hands clasped behind his back. "Mr. Walker, sir, I wanted to apologize properly. There's no excuse for my behavior. I was arrogant. I was wrong, deeply wrong. And I'm sorry." Walker studied the young Marine, seeing sincerity in his eyes. Not just the boy who mocked him, but the man taking shape. A faint smile touched his lips. "I told you, son. Humility. It looks good on you." "Wear it well." Harris straightened, the words sinking in like a metal pinned to his chest. In that quiet moment, the lesson was sealed, not by anger, but by forgiveness. The following week, the range was closed for a special event. General Lawson stood with Colonel Ramsey and senior officers. At a distance, Corporal Harris and his squad waited, posture rigid, silence heavy. At the bench, Edward Walker lay prone behind his orange rifle. The general had asked him to demonstrate what the weapon could do. Downrange at 4,000 meters, the target shimmered in the desert haze. The distance Harris had called impossible for a toy. No ceremony, no theatrics. Walker adjusted the scope with smooth, economical movements, checked the wind with eyes that read invisible currents like an old language, and went still. For a full minute, he became part of the landscape. Stone, sand, silence. Then came the crack, a single shot. The sound was sharp, almost anticlimactic. Seconds dragged by, the target a ghostly blur. Then the monitor beside the general flashed. One green light, dead center. A perfect bullseye. 4,000 meters. Gasps rippled through the crowd. It wasn't just skill. It wasn't just precision. It was impossible. A shot that defied physics, redrew belief's boundaries. In that instant, the legend of the Ghost of the Canyon was no longer a story whispered in classified briefings or hidden in records. It was alive, undeniable, witnessed by every soul on that range. If Edward Walker's story of quiet strength and hidden valor moved you, share it with those who honor our veterans. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of the unseen heroes among us, because their legacy deserves to be remembered.